Good afternoon. Welcome to Pittsburgh Land Bank Board of Directors meeting for Friday, June 14th. Our first order of business is roll call. We ask Bethany if she'd please call the roll.
Reverend Burgess.
Here.
Dr. Bay.
Here.
Paul Legger. Diamante Walker. Senator Fontana.
Here.
Councilwoman Cale Smith. Councilman Lavelle.
Here.
Steve Mazza. Wanda Wilson.
Here.
You have 5 members. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. First thing is the May minutes. You've had the May minutes emailed to you. I need a motion to accept and approve the May minutes.
So moved.
Yes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, there's nay. That brings us to public comment. I forgot. I always do that. I forget public, especially if there's not a lot of people here. Public comment. Members of the public who want to address the Land Bank, you'll be giving 3 minutes. Is there anyone here who wants to address the Land Bank Board today? No. If not, we will then go to Director's report. The first thing is we're asked that Bethany will talk to us about our insurance. The Executive Committee is recommending to the Board that we approve this, but I will have her discuss it before asking for a motion to approve it.
Thank you, Reverend Burgess. So in your packets, right behind the minutes, you have the letter from the insurance advisor, Bailey Robb, who this board is under a 12-month consulting contract with. So at the direction of the board, an RFQ was released, and we to 3 different brokerages. And received within that, as the report lays out, 26 different essentially agencies were selected to potentially respond within those 3 brokerages. We did receive 3 quotes, and I have a few copies of the itemized line items of the different levels of coverage that this land bank is seeking to procure. The overall takeaway from and recommendation from the insurance advisor is that this board needs property insurance, it needs general liability insurance, and it needs public officials insurance. And within that, there's lots of different pieces and levels of coverage. So within the 3 quotes, the insurance advisor made the recommendation to the executive committee that they bind the companies referred to as Lloyd's of London for property insurance, Harry for general liability insurance, and the Greenwich Company for public officials insurance. The executive committee has discussed as well, so I'll leave that to the executive committee. But I did want to make a couple of notes that are laid out in more detail in the report and certainly in the itemized bid letter or bid spreadsheet. There are 2 coverages that the board sought that were not critical to the organization, but would at this juncture, but would be important to and desirable to have moving forward. However, given the nature of the organization, given the type of risk and that it's fairly new, it was difficult to secure that insurance. One is referred to as non-hired automobile insurance, which just means that since the organization doesn't have automobiles, if a board member or a staff person were using their own car and got in an accident and didn't have their own sufficient coverage, the organization's coverage could kick in. We didn't receive a bid on that, but we're not worried about it at this time. The other is what's referred to as an umbrella policy, which just means that of the general liability coverage that you seek, it goes to a certain level, but you can pay a little bit more essentially to go beyond that under certain circumstances for certain events or certain needs. We also did not receive a bid or a quote for that coverage. Now we can bind coverage for the 3 different levels, again, property, general liability, and public officials at this time. And our insurance advisor will continue to work to get those coverages over the next, several months. Can't guarantee that we can procure it or secure it, but we'll continue to work on our behalf to do so. That's the overall overview.
Any other questions or concerns? So no questions or concerns. I need a motion to approve to accept and to contract with the insurance provider.
So moved.
Need a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposers, nay. Financial report, Ms. Davidson, in the absence of Mr. Lager.
Thank you. Also in your packet, you have your standard financial reports. The most activity that occurred, and I won't go through all of them in detail. The most activity that occurred was on the accounts payable and your expenditures year to date. You'll see that activity. There are 3 bills that two that need board approval, one that falls under the administrator approved expenditures. So again, there was no revenue secured in the last month, so it was mostly expenditures. And so I do want to note that we do foresee in the month of June, up until the next board meeting, a couple of additional expenditures because this board authorized 2 additional professional services contracts, one for property maintenance and the other for an online database management system. We have finalized those contracts, gone under contract, so we will be starting to make payments towards those contracts in the next few weeks.
Thank you very much. I entertain a motion to receive the financial review and approve makes expenditures. I need a motion. Need a second? Any other conversation? Other conversation? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposers, nay. Takes us to the inventory report. First, Ms. Clark.
Yes, happy to report that our first city-initiated acquisition, 243 Meadow, should be on the solicitor's desk next week. And after the return, this was all being done while the key assistant city solicitor who's on real estate matters, Dan Friedson, has been out of the office. He will come back, I understand, within a week or 2, and we will take up the matter of all other PLB-initiated properties under an option to purchase agreement template. And is there anything else to add on that? That's probably it. So we are glad to finally see by the next meeting that that property will be in inventory, 243 Meadow, and will run with the quiet title action, which will be necessary in order to make that property saleable.
So moving along with the inventory report, the next item is standard operating procedures. This board at the last month's meeting asked to understand in the next few meetings sort of a flow chart of acquisition steps and where we are in the various pipelines of different types of acquisitions. One is the city process that Irene enumerated. The other is the URA to land bank transfer process. As was reported last month, the URA also authorized the transfer of a property, 325 Jacunda Street, which is actually a single-family structure, to the land bank. And you'll see in your packet the enumerated standard operating procedure for that transfer. So you can see, and it's just in draft form, but we actually are on basically page 4, which is the last page of the document in terms of transfer procedural steps, is the next stage, and that is now that all of the terms of transfer have been agreed to, the actual documentation and making the transfer happen. So understanding, getting the checks ready, going and actually drafting the deed and signing the deed. So those we really are in terms of their 3 main buckets. We're at the 3rd piece of the URA to land bank transfer process. We will be mirroring creating this SOP, standard operating procedure, for city to land bank transfers as well. We're working very closely with the city real estate department to do this. And once that's ready, you can follow essentially step by step, so you'll know exactly where in that process we are.
Takes us to the Property Reserve Committee. Ms. Wilson.
Yeah, the committee, we have a handout of the members of the working group. That's the committee, and I think that went around to everybody. and a timeline, a draft timeline for the Property Reserve 2.0, we're calling it. So how we can take the existing property reserve process that sits within the city and have that be operated through the land bank. So our goal is to have that process in place in terms of figuring out the process and any changes that need to be made to improve the existing process, but also keep all the good parts of how it's working very well for nonprofit partners to be able to utilize the property reserve, for community development projects. Keep all the good parts of it and fix some of the things, and have that then sit over as part of the land bank. And the expertise around the table at this working group or at this committee is excellent. Lots of people with exactly the right kind of expertise that we need. And I think the meeting we had this week was very productive to get us all kind of on the same page of the charge, the work in front of us. And we'll have some drafts hopefully by September to get feedback from people, from the board and from the community, and hopefully have it in place by the end of the year.
So, go ahead.
I'm curious, is the only CDC on here is ELDI?
No, I mean, Ed Nusser has a lot of experience from a community development corporation, as do I.
So Wanda is as
There's-
executive director of Oakland Planning and Development.
So there's no one southwest of the river, but most of these people are from the East End, and no one from a CDC on our side of town, southwest of the river.
Not from a CDC specifically, no.
Right.
The two representatives that you see there are actually identified by Vacant Property Working Group to, because of how involved Vacant Property Working Group is with the property reserve, to be part of the committee.
One of the discussions we did have was who isn't around the table and who else do we need to add to the committee. So if, and I think we've talked about that at this table as well. So and I think the offer was made, if any board member has a specific name to nominate, they
Okay. And
definitely
who do we
should.
submit that to?
Wanda or myself. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I know that part of the idea was to have a listening session here and to use the board mechanism to do that, where people can kind of make some comments on the front end. Were we thinking about that for next board meeting, or is that, I don't know, I wasn't sure if that is it, that's fine. That is that prior to any draft of any recommendations, we'll simply listen to, to that, we'll sort of invite people to come and sort of give their input during our public comment session as a time to kind of comment on that. And we'll use that as the listening session. And so is that the plan?
That was what the committee discussed on Wednesday.
But in addition to that, we definitely are building in more community process around actually seeing what the work of the committee is producing, which will probably actually happen more we definitely want the listening session, but in terms of more of a dialogue with users of the property reserve and folks who may be interested in a little bit more input, that would probably happen in September is what we're laying out on the time frame right now.
So I just want to be clear. I think there's a lot of people that would have concerns with some of these people on this list. There's some of the people that think that they are responsible for doing some of the things not so positive in parts of the city of Pittsburgh. And to say that these are the people who have been working on it gives me no reassurance at all, because I don't think they've been successful. So
I think there's a three-step process. So let me lay out as I kind of understand the process. First thing is there will be this time when the public can kind of sort of get their opinion. At the same time, board members we're open to increasing the advisory committee to the extent people want to join. I think that's the first phase of this. I think the second phase of this is when we actually create a document and a procedure, right? I think once that's created, there is a different listening opportunity. We'll figure out what that is, whether it's a public hearing or whether it's a community meeting in the community. We'll figure that out, right? There should be a second
Yeah, that's what I'm, you know, hoping to incorporate some draft changes into the time frame to allow for more of a community meeting,
Yeah.
you know, maybe in addition to just public comment, because
Yes.
we really need more of an opportunity for, you know, a dialogue, rather than just you know, giving, like, we also will have the giving testimony, but I think you missed that opportunity to talk back and forth.
I think once a draft is identified, I think then we need a community event, meeting, opportunity, one, maybe, at least one, maybe more, it depends, I don't think more than one, but probably one, somewhere, maybe in the West End, but we need one activity, and then after that, that's the sort of second thing. So then after you have public comment and public participation in the first part, you have public comment and public participation in the second part, then the last time is when it comes to us, right? And then we have the wherewithal to amend, to adjust on behalf of our constituents. So
So I'll just say, I don't want to belabor the point. I'll talk to you later about it, but I think my concern is mostly that I just don't like organized groups speaking for residents. I think that there should be the opportunity for residents to have their input. And
we'll figure out how to do that.
And I've seen these groups speak for the areas for a long time, and nobody, longtime residents, new residents, don't always necessarily agree with their direction of what they want to take their neighborhoods into.
So
I just wanna
we'll
say-
continue to have this conversation, and you'll recommend individuals
A lot of
that.
recommendations, we have a
yeah,
conversation.
recommend. All right, so that takes us to the Communication Committee, Mr. Bay.
Yes, sir. So we've had a working draft of the website with the aesthetic layout. The committee's reviewed it, and we like the direction that they're headed in. Now they're just filling in the secondary pages, modernizing or updating some of the photos. But, you know, we're getting what we paid for. I think we're going to be happy with this, and in the next couple of weeks, we'll be ready to roll it out for a review. So the progress there, you know, we're happy with it.
If I may add, one of the additional items that was designed intentionally and is working well is that we did sign the contract with the online database management system so that as the website is being built, it can be integrated from the beginning. So I've been working with the web developer and with the company eProperty Plus to make sure that integration is happening. And we have been on a series of calls, and Eric is the web designer, is building it into the website as we speak.
All right, thank you very much. I would suggest, given that we are we will probably not have a meeting in August. I don't think we have a board meeting in August. I'm almost sure we don't. But we probably will not have a board meeting in August, depends on what we have, probably not. And that since we're using the next meeting to have a listening session, which will be our July meeting, I was just sitting here, we may want to delay this public comment conversation until September because, both there was no one here today to speak. So let's we have a recommendation from our solicitor. We have some things to think about. If it's okay by common consensus, let's just wait till September. Let's get through this process. And then if we decide that we want to have a second public comment session, let's make that decision in September. I don't think we'll need it between now and then. That brings us to the last part of the meeting, which is the legislative and regulatory updates. That's both Bethany and the senator.
Since you have a timeline, is there anything you want to go first, Senator Fontana?
Thank you. As indicated there, Hospital 896 and Hospital 897, these are two bills that on June 12th went through the House Urban and Affairs Committee. They were passed. 896 expands the eligibility criteria for the Neighborhood Assistance Program to include homeless housing assistance projects located within the land bank jurisdictions. And 897 would expand the power of existing land banks to enter into partnerships with organizations in the private sector to create local solutions to address the lack of housing for the homeless population within their own communities, and would exempt all land bank transactions from both state and local realty transfer taxes. That, as I said, they went through committee. It'll go to the floor of the House, hopefully the next 2 weeks, and then they will have to go over to the Senate, go into the Housing and Urban Affairs over there, and then, so hopefully by the end of the year, you'll see some of these bills passed. So, but it won't, I doubt if it'll be before that. There are some other bills, if you like to see Senate Bill 30, I think you asked me about, that's the state housing tax credit. It's going to allocate $10 million per fiscal year to allow local allocating agencies the authority to issue tax credits for acquisition, rehabilitation, or new construction of rental housing targeted to lower-income households. This bill passed Urban Affairs on March and is located in the Appropriations Committee now. Senate Bill 174, it's the Abandoned Property Tax Sale Act. This has been going on for years, trying to figure this out. Provides the process to remove or transfer abandoned buildings within a municipality. A purchaser must enter into a redevelopment agreement with the local municipality or redevelopment authority so that the properties can be put back into productive use to the benefit of the community. It passed Urban Affairs in March, passed Appropriations in May, and hopefully it'll hit the floor of the Senate coming up. On Wednesday, this past Wednesday, the following bills, the Wednesday coming up here, the following bills are going to be considered in the Senate by the Urban Affairs Committee. It's Senate Bill 31, that's the FAR bill. We're trying to eliminate the artificial $25 million cap on the royalty transfer tax revenues deposited into the PA Housing Rehabilitation Enhancement Fund. If you eliminate the cap, that'll allow FAR to receive and distribute more than $25 million, which will create additional revenues to be spent on creating and preserving affordable rental housing units, assist veterans, persons with disabilities, the elderly, and first-time home buyers. Senate Bill 352, again, scheduled for a vote on Wednesday. It establishes a tax exemption and mixed-use incentive program act. It allows the local taxing authorities to provide for tax exemption incentives for improvements in new construction in deteriorated areas of communities, including industrial, commercial, business, and residential. Senate Bill 438, actually a Democrats bill. The legislation would amend, sorry about that. The legislation would amend the real estate tax sale law by establishing a county demolition and rehabilitation fund in each county in which the fee not to exceed $250 for the sale of any property being sold for mortgage foreclosure is collected. The fund will be used by the county and any not-for-profit or for-profit corporation that has a contract with the county or taxing authority for the demolition or rehabilitation of blighted property located in that county. Obviously trying to raise money to knock down properties. Senator Brewster's the sponsor, and he's from McKeesport, so they have those issues down there in those towns. House Bill 407 amends Title I by providing for a uniform definition for blight. The definition will apply whenever the term is used in statute enacted after 1937 and in all future statutes, unless clearly stated otherwise. This is a bipartisan support. They're trying to get an exact definition of blight, and so it's uniform with every piece of legislation going forward. So that's the update, unless you have any questions.
Anything from you? We're good?
Well, I do have a couple of other items.
Senator, thank you very much for your report.
It sounds like they're keeping more than busy. Also at the state level, two other updates. I think as this board is aware, in September, I went with other sort of delegates from around the state to a meeting with the Department of Revenue on behalf of the Land Bank, and there were, again, other Land Bank representatives regarding some new a memo which clarified regulation around inheritance tax. Now, that pursuant to that meeting, the parties that attended the meeting sent a follow-up memo, which we were again a party to, and we just recently, a couple weeks ago, got received the response from the Department of Revenue. Both the original memo, which I know has been provided before to this board, and the response are in your packet. I would say that generally speaking, the response was not favorable to the request that we made. which was essentially for an exemption for land bank transactions to not have to file this particular item. Won't go into a ton of detail. We are very fortunate to have experts in both Mike McCabe at Gehring, Renner, and Beam, who's been sort of the one leading, drafting the memos, has already followed up, requesting a follow-up meeting. And we're just sort of in the next steps. So there will be more coming. Just wanted to give the board the update. And if you do read through and you have more technical questions, both Irene and Mike, I think, are available to answer them. So did want to provide that update. And then also provided in your packet at the very back of it is some information regarding Governor Wolf's proposed infrastructure budget spending plan called Restore PA. There are two particular items in this infrastructure plan that are very specific, that can affect land banks. So I don't think there are any exact dollar amounts proposed yet or not in the packet that I've provided, but the one around blight reduction specific to land banks has more to do with demolition dollars. And then the second around green infrastructure is about open space planning and adding to park space. And there may be roles in terms of acquisition or assisting our partner agencies in doing those activities. So I wanted to highlight that. There aren't a lot of funds at the state level to date that are specifically called out for land banks. So it's nice to see now that there are almost 15 land banks in Pennsylvania that there are dollars being sort of directly allocated or called out, and it's just a funding source that may be available to us in future activities. Can't speak to exactly, I don't know if Senator Fontana can, where that bill is, what the likelihood of it passing is, but the land banks are included in it.
The governor's been all over the state promoting Restore PA. It has a lot of things in it besides that. It certainly talks about flooding and landslides and things like that the city has dealt with in the past year, trying to get some funding for that. But Restore PA is based on changing the severance tax. It's not connected to the budget. So the budget could pass and this could fail or not even get a vote. So the governor's been around the state trying to promote Restore PA, but on the basis that we could change the severance tax and raise the $400 million through that, which we should do, but we probably won't. But it can't continue past the budget as far as negotiation, and it should be that money isn't just for, not to be political, but it's not just for Democratic areas. Landslides and flooding and all those things happen all over the state in everybody's area. So it is something that we'll, I think, continue to discuss, because we're one of the lowest when it comes to severance tax and the money that we get from drilling and those types of things. It's probably the lowest. We're as high as far as what we take out of the ground as Texas, but yet we get way less money. So we're working on that. The pressure on the other side of the aisle here to step up and help us raise some additional dollars. So we'll see what happens, but I don't have a lot of hope by the end of the month. Let's put it that way.
Any other conversation? Anything else that there is no new business? Anything else that comes before the land bank? If not, I'll turn a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposers, nay. We are adjourned.